Hey friend, let's talk about something today that might just flip your understanding of yourself on its head. What if I told you that the very survival instinct inside you, the one working day and night to keep you alive, is actually, secretly, murdering you? Whoa, hold on a second. You might say, that's ridiculous. My survival instinct is a precious gift from our ancestors, helping us avoid danger and stay alive. How could it be a killer? I know, it sounds like a paradox. But bear with me. Let me tell you a true story, one that's stranger than fiction. The year is 1983. In a major hospital in the United States, a very special patient was admitted with a condition that sounds almost trivial: intractable hiccups. Now, don't underestimate hiccups. This man had been hiccuping non-stop for over 2 years. Imagine it, a hic every 10 seconds or so, for 2 years. Sometimes the hiccups were so violent they would trigger seizures. It was life-threatening. The doctors were at their wits' end. They had tried everything, but nothing worked. Finally, out of desperation, they proposed a last resort: brain surgery. The plan was to sever a nerve in his brain to cut the power to the hiccups for good. The family was horrified. Brain surgery for hiccups? The risk was far too great. They wanted to try anything else. After asking around, they heard that hypnosis might be a potential cure. As luck would have it, there was a psychologist at that very hospital who practiced hypnosis. The family clung to this as their last hope and begged him to help. Back then, however, hypnosis wasn't as accepted as it is today. To many prominent doctors, it was no better than a charlatan's trick, completely unscientific. The hospital and other physicians were strongly against it, but the family's persistent, daily pleas eventually wore the administration down. Fine, they conceded. Let him try. We'll just see what kind of show he puts on. The day of the treatment was quite a spectacle. When the psychologist, Dr. Marc Schoen, walked into the patient's room, he was stunned. The room and the hallway outside were packed with doctors, arms crossed, with expressions that all said, "I'm just here to watch the show." They were all waiting to see how this quack would handle the inevitable failure. The session began. Dr. Schoen started by making small talk with the patient. Of course, it was a painfully slow conversation, with the patient's hiccups breaking every sentence into pieces. But as they talked, Dr. Schoen noticed something peculiar. The patient came from a very cold region, and every time their conversation touched on the topic of cold, the man's hiccups would miraculously pause for a moment. That's it, Dr. Schoen thought. He decided to dive deeper into this theme of cold, subtly weaving in hypnotic techniques. His voice grew slower, his tone deeper, and something incredible happened. The patient's hiccuping frequency began to decrease, slower and slower, until, in less than 10 minutes, the hiccups that had tortured him for over 2 years vanished completely. The entire room fell silent. Everyone was speechless, their jaws on the floor. It wasn't just the spectating doctors who were stunned. Dr. Schoen himself was amazed by the instantaneous result. It was only later, as medical knowledge advanced, that Dr. Schoen began to understand what had truly happened. Hypnosis was merely the key that unlocked the door. The real cure came from the fact that he had accidentally stumbled upon the root cause of the illness. And what was that root cause? You guessed it, the overreaction of the survival instinct. You see, before his illness, the patient had suffered a series of personal and professional losses. He was harboring a deep-seated anger. Medically, intense anger can sometimes trigger hiccups. Normally, you might hiccup a few times when you're upset, and then it passes. But here's where things went terribly wrong. His brain, his ancient survival instinct, made a colossal mistake. It misinterpreted those life losses as a grave threat to his very existence. This misjudgment prevented his anger from dissipating, instead amplifying it within his body, eventually forging it into a stubborn response pattern. The result? Hiccuping until the end of time. Okay, story time is over. You might be thinking, that's just one rare case. What does it have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. Today, many of us struggle with insomnia, obesity, or chronic fatigue that no amount of sleep can fix. Perhaps you, listening to this right now, are battling one of these issues. Very often, behind these health problems lies a well-intentioned but misguided survival instinct, just like the one in the hiccuping patient. Without our knowledge, it traps us in anxiety and fear, which then manifest as unhealthy behaviors that only get worse over time. This is why I say your survival instinct is killing you. So, what exactly is this mysterious survival instinct? Simply put, there's a part of our brain called the limbic system. You can think of it as the brain's emotional headquarters, a very primitive and ancient part. Basic bodily responses like your heartbeat and sweating are sent here as signals, and this headquarters processes them into raw emotions like anger, fear, or joy. When we encounter something unpleasant, this manager feels discomfort and generates negative emotions. To end this discomfort quickly, the brain needs to find some form of pleasure to balance things out. This need to seek pleasure and avoid pain is what Dr. Marc Schoen calls the survival instinct. So how does this instinct, which is supposed to protect us, lead us down the wrong path? Dr. Schoen discovered it usually happens in 6 steps, like a carefully laid trap. Step 1. Anxiety quietly plants its seed. Let me tell you another story. A patient, a high-powered executive at a film studio, was a workaholic who stayed late every day. She gradually noticed a habit. Even after her work was done, she'd sit at her computer, preferring to answer trivial emails rather than go home. She thought it was just dedication, but she didn't realize that deep down, she was trapped in profound anxiety. The seed of harm had been planted. You see, we all want life to be smooth, but reality is never perfect. The world changes, people change, and feelings of imbalance and confusion are common. Add overwhelming stress to the mix, and anxiety naturally comes knocking. Step 2. The body starts to feel uncomfortable. Many people mistakenly believe that if they don't feel anxious, then anxiety doesn't exist and can't harm them. That's completely wrong. Anxiety is like an undercurrent, silently affecting your body where you can't see it. It might raise your blood sugar or blood pressure, or cause various aches and pains. These discomforts are often so mild at first that you don't even notice them, but Dr. Schoen explains that everyone has a discomfort tolerance limit, like a cup. Chronic anxiety is like dripping water into that cup. Sooner or later, it will overflow, and problems will emerge. Step 3. Fear makes its grand entrance. When the body's signals of discomfort reach a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, it conspires with the emotional headquarters to produce a more specific emotion: fear. Dr. Schoen's patients were afraid of everything: fear of being hungry, fear of not sleeping, fear of elevators, fear of getting too close to others. Ultimately, what they feared was a loss of control. Take insomnia, for example. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more awake you become, right? That's because we only feel safe and relaxed when we feel that things are under control. To eliminate fear and regain that sense of security, our body starts to take matters into its own hands. And this is where our protagonist, the survival instinct, quietly takes the stage. Step 4. The survival instinct's colossal misjudgment. Pay close attention, because this is the most critical step. Our survival instinct was forged tens of thousands of years ago in a primitive world. Back then, survival was brutal. Food was scarce, and shelter was precarious. So, the moment the body felt any discomfort, the survival instinct sounded the alarm. Not enough food? It pushed you to hunt and gather frantically. Getting cold? It forced you to find fire and shelter. In that era, these were life-saving skills. But here's the problem. Times have changed. We now live in a civilized world, with mountains of food available at the tap of a phone. Basic survival is no longer a daily struggle. Logically, these ancient instincts should have retired, but they remain stubbornly embedded in our brains. What's more, a strange comfort paradox has emerged. The more convenient and comfortable our lives become, the more sensitive we are to the slightest discomfort. The patience of our survival instinct hasn't improved, it has gotten worse. Why? Dr. Schoen believes the rise of microwaves and fast food is a major factor. Think about it. Before these inventions, no matter how hungry you were, you had to wait patiently for food to cook. This waiting process inadvertently trained your survival instinct's patience. But now, hungry? The microwave dings, you tap an app, and food arrives instantly. Our tolerance for hunger has plummeted. This shift reveals our growing craving for instant gratification. In this mindset, even the slightest external discomfort makes us desperate to eliminate it, to ensure we are safe. This impulse has expanded far beyond just eating. It now affects our decision-making, making us more irritable and prone to overreacting. Consider traffic jams. They used to be a minor annoyance, but now, more and more people react with extreme road rage, shouting, honking incessantly, even getting violent, as if being 5 minutes late is a life-or-death crisis. You see, the survival instinct is single-minded. It hasn't evolved with civilization. It only remembers the simple conditioning of the primitive world. Discomfort equals danger. It can't distinguish the complex situations of modern society. So, it treats all discomforts equally as existential threats. Compounded by its dwindling patience, our fear in the face of perceived risks gets magnified exponentially. For example, you feel a minor discomfort, and your survival instinct interprets it as, you're about to die. You're just a little hungry, and it thinks, you're going to starve. You mess up a public speech, and it concludes, you will be cast out by the tribe and freeze to death in the wilderness. It's a ridiculous exaggeration, a complete misjudgment. But our brain's emotional headquarters doesn't care about logic. The moment the survival instinct sends the signal, it unleashes a cascade of even more dramatic and intense reactions. Step 5. The body shows severe protest symptoms. When the survival instinct feels threatened, it creates a major disturbance in the body. Remember the film executive from earlier? One day, she was in a meeting, and the air conditioning broke. The room became hot and stuffy. Suddenly, she felt like she couldn't breathe, like she was suffocating. Her heart raced, and she became dizzy. This was the survival instinct acting up again. It had exaggerated, the AC is broken into, there's no air, believing that the fundamental need for oxygen was under severe threat. So, it used symptoms like breathlessness and dizziness to sound the alarm. This alarm system varies from person to person. Some people feel constantly hungry, others develop itchy skin, and some feel chronically weak. These long-term symptoms may have started as a minor cold or a single stomachache. They initially resolved quickly, but we failed to notice the underlying psychological issue. The trigger remained dormant in the body, leaving behind a spark of discomfort. When this accumulates and meets an external stimulus, it's like a match hitting gunpowder. Boom! A small cold can become a chronic cough. A minor stomachache can evolve into anorexia. Step 6. Falling into the death loop of bad habits. This is the final and most dangerous step. Our brain has a chemical called dopamine, which you can think of as the pleasure molecule. It's released when we think about happy things and suppressed when we think about unhappy things. The more anxious and uncomfortable we are, the less dopamine we have. And the less dopamine we have, the more uncomfortable we feel. This creates a vicious cycle that ultimately leads to survival terror. So, a drop in dopamine is a key reason why anxiety triggers the survival instinct. At this point, to save itself, the brain asks for help from certain behaviors, specifically, those that can give us a quick hit of pleasure and boost dopamine secretion. But dopamine has a fatal flaw. While anticipating a pleasant experience causes a surge, actually experiencing it causes the levels to start dropping. This means that after you achieve gratification once, the subsequent drop in dopamine creates a new sense of discomfort, forcing you to seek a new, even stronger stimulus. Unfortunately, because our patience is so low, we consistently make poor choices, turning to bad habits that offer quick fixes but have devastating long-term consequences. Sometimes these are compulsive behaviors, like repetitive hand-washing or chronic hiccuping. Other times, they are addictive behaviors, like alcoholism, drug abuse, or substance addiction. Their common feature is that they provide rapid gratification, temporarily suppressing the fear. But they also cause your dopamine levels to plummet dramatically afterward, trapping you in a deeper, vicious cycle with ever-increasing dependency, from which it's nearly impossible to escape. Binge eaters are a perfect example. Low dopamine makes them want to eat, but once they finish, their dopamine drops to a new low, compelling them to eat again, creating a relentless, habitual cycle. Let's look at one more real-life case to tie these 6 steps together. Bethany was a Hollywood agent. Her immense work pressure led to chronic anxiety and deteriorating health. Steps 1 and 2. One day, she was on a flight that hit turbulence. This minor trigger instantly detonated her accumulated anxiety, awakening her survival instinct. She became convinced the plane was going to crash and she was going to die. Steps 3 and 4. The entire flight was pure agony for her. Although the plane landed safely, a deep-seated fear of flying had taken root. During the turbulent flight, Bethany had ordered several drinks to calm herself down. From then on, every time she had to fly, she relied on drinking to build up her courage. Step 5's coping mechanism. This was the shortcut she chose to boost her dopamine. But sadly, this didn't reduce her anxiety. It just threw her into the death loop we just discussed. Step 6. She needed more and more drinks. When alcohol stopped working, she started taking medication, developing a dependency, and requiring ever-increasing doses. Eventually, even the medication failed. Bethany made a final decision. She would never fly again. You can imagine the devastating blow this was to the career of a Hollywood agent who needed to travel the world. So, we now have a clear picture of this survival instinct incident. It starts with anxiety, which leads to discomfort, which breeds fear. This then triggers the survival instinct's colossal misjudgment, causing physical problems. Finally, to alleviate these problems, we resort to bad habits, which only hurt us more deeply. Looking at it this way, anxiety is the root of all evil. But where does anxiety come from? In our fast-paced era, many people feel disconnected from the world if they don't receive a text or email for half a day. This feeling shows that we are becoming increasingly dependent on external stimuli. When those stimuli decrease, anxiety sets in. We are more and more influenced by external factors, adopting others' standards as our own, while forgetting to ask what our own hearts truly desire. This process has a name: psychological externalization. The most classic example is weight loss. Magazines and TV shows constantly tell you that thin is beautiful. This external standard influences countless young women, compelling them to conform. To meet this standard quickly, they sometimes resort to extreme measures, like relying on diet pills, all of which are unhealthy ways to alleviate the discomfort of not measuring up. This external influence is often subtle. Advertisers are masters of a technique called psychological matching. For instance, a commercial shows someone drinking alcohol while having a great time at a party. After seeing this repeatedly, our brains automatically link two unrelated things: drinking and happiness. Research shows that even if you don't consciously watch the ad, the mere projection of that image onto your retina can alter your brain activity. So, you see, whether you like it or not, external factors are profoundly shaping us, making us more confused and more anxious, which in turn makes it easier for our survival instinct to make a mistake. So, what can we do? Are we doomed to be manipulated by this clumsy liability of a teammate? Of course not. The key is to alleviate the anxiety and discomfort to make the survival instinct less sensitive. Note, I said alleviate, not eliminate. Why can't we eliminate it? Because alongside the impulsive emotional headquarters, the limbic system, our brain also has a rational CEO, the cerebral cortex, which is responsible for thinking and analysis. When faced with danger, the CEO will rationally analyze the situation and tell you, it's okay, but the emotional headquarters will only generate anxiety. The CEO constantly tries to control the emotional headquarters and tell it to calm down. Unfortunately, perhaps because the emotional headquarters is an elder that appeared much earlier in evolution, its power is far greater. The CEO simply can't overpower it. Therefore, trying to completely eliminate anxiety and discomfort is impossible. Since we can't control it, let's change our strategy. Instead of a dictatorship, let's aim for coordination. Let the CEO and the emotional headquarters coexist peacefully and manage anxiety together. This requires us to master a superpower that Dr. Schoen calls dual awareness capability. This means being able to have two sensory experiences at the same time. For example, standing on a beach, you can simultaneously feel the refreshing sea breeze and the softness of the sand. Or, if you get a mosquito bite, even though one spot is itchy, it doesn't stop you from smiling at the same time. When we are anxious or fearful, We tend to make absolute judgments. I am either in pain or not in pain. But in reality, even if one part of your body hurts, other parts might feel perfectly fine. This black and white perspective leads to extreme reactions. It's why minor things like traffic jams and waiting in line can make people so enraged. By mastering dual awareness, you can feel anxious or uncomfortable while simultaneously feeling relaxed. Yes, you heard that right. Allowing comfort and discomfort to exist at the same time. It sounds contradictory, but its purpose is to teach your brain a crucial lesson. If I can feel relaxed, even when I'm uncomfortable, it must mean that this discomfort isn't actually life-threatening. I am still safe. This way, the emotional headquarters won't perceive a threat to survival and won't overreact. And our brain's CEO will become more confident, learning to manage discomfort through self-regulation instead of suppressing it with external crutches. This is how they achieve coordination. So, what we need to do is face the anxiety and discomfort in our lives head on. We can even proactively add a little stress. The more you practice functioning amidst distractions, the better you'll become at handling discomfort. It's like getting a vaccine. By experiencing a little bit of the ailment, you build a stronger immunity. In prehistoric times, comfort was beneficial for survival. But today, to prevent our survival instinct from doing more harm than good, actively learning to experience some discomfort is actually more beneficial for our survival. So, what are the practical steps? Dr. Schoen offers 3 categories of simple methods you can try. Method 1. Reduce the need for instant gratification. As we've discussed, our addiction to instant gratification fuels anxiety, so consciously delay it. For example, when you feel hungry, try waiting a little longer before eating to cultivate your survival instincts, patience. We can also temporarily disconnect from technology. An hour or 2 before bed, turn off your computer and phone. You can also try emptying your mind. Just sit quietly without thinking about anything. Or, when you eat, don't watch TV. Focus solely on the taste and smell of your food, engaging only your senses of taste and smell. This helps you become more present and learn to find satisfaction with less stimulation. Method 2. Learn to accept imperfection. Remember, perfection is not the normal state of life. If we constantly expect everything to be perfect, reality will inevitably disappoint us, creating anxiety. We must learn to accept imperfection and the uncertainties of life. Don't force yourself to finish every single task. Reduce your dependence on external rewards and validation. Set aside some time to do things you genuinely love, allowing yourself to completely relax. You can also challenge yourself. Try eating foods you don't particularly like, listen to music outside of your preferred genres, or read a book that challenges your existing beliefs. These imperfect experiences might feel a little uncomfortable, but they are like exercising your psychological muscles. A little bit of struggle makes you stronger. In Dr. Schoen's words, this will expand your psychological comfort zone, making you less reactive to external triggers. Method 3. Establish a regular routine. We feel most comfortable in familiar, predictable environments. A regular routine helps you build that predictable pattern. You can create a schedule to regulate your daily life. In the process, try to slow down your pace and allow for frequent moments of rest. For example, listen to relaxing music before bed, or stick to a consistent exercise regimen. All right, let's summarize this brain-bending but crucial topic. Your survival instinct, the bodyguard that's supposed to protect you, can sometimes harm you through misjudgment. This process unfolds in 6 steps: generating anxiety, causing discomfort, breeding fear, triggering the instinct's misjudgment, leading to severe physical and psychological symptoms, and finally, trapping you in a vicious cycle of bad habits. The key to breaking this cycle is not to eliminate anxiety, but to face it bravely, allowing discomfort and a sense of safety to coexist, thereby lowering the sensitivity of your survival instinct. We can train this ability through 3 types of methods. First, reduce the need for instant gratification and cultivate patience. Second, learn to accept imperfection and expand your psychological comfort zone. And third, establish a regular routine to create a sense of security. I hope today's story has given you some new insights. Remember, we must become the masters of our emotions. not be led by the nose, by our ancient instincts. Thanks for listening, and until next time,